Casual Magic has been sponsored by Quiver, maker of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine deck holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their website for 10% off your order. We're also sponsored by Architect, the premier site for hosting your decks on the internet. I love them and they love me, and it seems like a good reason for you to use them. You can also support Casual Magic directly by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/ShivamB. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam, Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Quiver and Architect and by my patrons at patreon.com/ShivamB. Today, I'm very excited to have a really cool guest on the show. Jake Boss, who's the production and post-production supervisor over at Command Zone and Game Nights, literally the biggest in our industry. This dude puts on all the shows we get to see, and it's incredible. And also, I just love running into you at like Magic Cons. It's just always very pleasant to say hello and just chat for a bit. So I'm really glad that you're able to join me today.
Yeah, you're the happy person, you know, like there's a good aura that floats my way when it's time for that Shiva moment, you know.
I love it. I mean, it's very humbling to hear people say that, but it makes me happy when people are happy to see me.
I don't know who you're wronging out there who wouldn't be happy to see you, but yeah, they're nuts.
I don't know. There have been times when Sheldon would look at me like, "What did you do now?" And I'm like, "I did nothing. It's fine." But in any case, man, yeah, because like we got to chatting after the game nights live in Amsterdam, and it was just really cool to see you and sit and chat. And so I was like really curious to learn about your pathway to getting to putting on one of the biggest shows we've ever gotten, you know, because
it's an interesting story that you bookend. You may not remember this, but I used to do I'll start with the early stuff is you know, I've been a filmmaker for a long time. I've been a filmmaker I think for 17 years now.
Wow.
I started, you know, very seriously getting into it in high school in 2007. And, you know, I was making movies like every week, doing the thing all through high school. And I started selling stuff like immediately during my senior year. I would do like scout videos and stuff like that. And then the drummer for my band, his dad owned.
You were in a band?
Oh, yeah. I was in a garage band for 7 years in high school. And that was a big part of growing up, too. But anyway, yeah, I played synth in that band. It was fun. So anyway, the drummer in my band, his dad owned a well-renowned post house in Portland, and he said, if you go to this school, I'll give you a job.
Oh, that's
hot. So I did, and he gave me an internship that was unpaid. I went out there, and then this is where the magic happens. It was 2016, and I got a job at a media company, or as a media person at a manufacturing company. And I was working on a lot of Kickstarter stuff. So I was selling off-grid battery systems and stuff like that. We had a lot of different companies that our group serviced. And it's all different people, different brands, but it's really the same people. It wasn't anything shady like that. It's just, you know, a lot of pies.
Sure.
So then I had this idea. And I approached my boss and I said, hey, I want to make a life counter for Magic the Gathering. I want to make it the size of a card so it fits in every deck box. I want it to have 4 life totals on it. I want it to be old school LCD technology so that it runs on watch batteries and it's not going to run out of batteries forever. I wrote up all the plans. I wrote the instruction manual, did the graphic design, sent it off to China, and my boss made it a reality. And then I sold 3,000 of them throughout the lifetime of the product. It was called Mojo. It was a digital scorekeeper. And
I have one of those.
You do?
Yeah.
I might have given it to you at GP Vegas 2017. I was reaching out to everybody and being like, hey, you know, I'm working on this thing, you know? I was so new to the scene that like I reached out to a lot of people that I didn't know all the history of the tapestry of the lore of all the magic people and stuff. I was just trying to get anybody who I've seen on TV to be interested, you know?
No,
Um,
that's fair, man. That's marketing.
yeah. And so GP Vegas 2017, I remember seeing you there, and I must have come up to you or something. I don't know how you ended up with one, but yeah, that was my first like foray into content, if you want to call it that.
That's a really cool. I mean, it was a really cool idea at the time. It was
Yeah,
very novel and very interesting.
and I didn't have control over a lot of factors in it. Uh, the things I had control over were their marketing and the manufacturing of it and everything like that. But yeah, that was my first dive into all that stuff. And then from there, a friend from the film school recommended me for an editing job that he couldn't take,
Hmm.
which is one of those things where, like, be cool to everybody because you never know when
Right.
that one guy that nobody wanted to work with is going to call you and be like, "Hey, I want you to take this commercial for T-Mobile and Overwatch. And by the way, they need somebody tomorrow, so give them your tomorrow rate." So I made as much as I did in a month normally in 1 week, and I did this cool T-Mobile Overwatch thing. I wowed the people, and I had this experience where this elderly guy walks in the room, and we're on a deadline, and everybody's rushing, and the whole room stops to listen to a story that he's telling. So I think, well, that guy's important.
I should listen to this story.
So I found some excuse to show that guy the Kickstarter thing, and he hired me from there because he said, "Listen, I don't have an editor job for you, but I'm going to hire you for something. Do you know anything about programming?" No. So I did some marketing stuff for an AR VR company, and then I it was an ad agency type post production house. So
Mm,
we would do a lot of ads, a lot of animation stuff like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, stuff like that.
sure.
So then I got more editing jobs while I was at this job, and then I had enough editing experience to go back to my original drummer's dad's place, the
Mm.
well-renowned place, and finally get a seat there. And at 24, I was running rooms of ad executives and stuff, and major Kroger brand commercials and stuff like that that
That's
was on
rad.
my mom's TV. It was really fun, but there was a lot of off time because the grocery store, they don't have something going on all the time, but we were salaried, so I
Good
would
enough,
have
man.
free reign to do whatever I wanted. So I started an MTG Tonight Show. So I had like this giant blue backdrop and a giant moon and a desk and live music. I would go out and film bands and put my backdrop up in their practice space so we could be the Tonight Show basically. And because I saw a Mr. Rogers documentary, and the way that he was sharing with his community, especially that iconic police officer, where in the pool and we're talking about
Yeah.
racism. I was thinking that's really awesome. What if we were talking about magic text? Which is like, it's kind of a cynical thought, but it's a really nice way to be sharing stuff with people. So
Yeah.
when I interview someone, I was interviewing them about their deck. And I won't say that it
Mm.
was like the perfect thing, but I posted a preview for the first chunk of what I was doing on Twitter. I'm like, I just want to put it up there. I want to show everybody kind of what I'm doing. And then, boom, Tellurian College followed you, liked you, DM'd, replied, "I want to be a part of this. I'm in Portland. Let's do something." So he was on my episode 3, and this is after Josh and I first met because I took a picture of my $40,000 broadcast monitor in my edit suite and said, "Hey, I want to work on magic content for free. Who's in?" And Josh said, "I'm interested. DM me. Nobody works for me for free." Uh, so I wasn't even going for command zone, but the
Well, I
man
mean, you
reached
showed that
out.
you had the equipment and the gumption to do it, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you can't not be an editor and be working in an edit suite, I guess. So we did a small engagement while they were developing the original first episode of Extra Turns, and it just wasn't the right time. So
Hmm.
we parted ways, and it was just like, now we're done. And it was all cool. But for 3 months, I kind of felt like Spider-Man waiting for the call from Iron Man. Like, Mr. Stark, I'm ready to go. Let's do something. And three
Right.
months later, I'm like, I have to make magic stuff. I just have to do it. So, my now wife and I worked so hard on this Tonight Show because we had to. And, I'm sure Josh, if I asked him, would tell me that was kind of a key part of us moving down to LA and being hired and all that stuff, even if it wasn't really, because it makes my ego feel good, and like a type worth something. Uh, but yeah, I'm really happy that we did all that stuff. I did a lot of studying of Johnny Carson and everything during that time. Of uh, here's how Johnny would interact with the audience. He wouldn't be like, "Wow, big crowd," you know. What
Hmm.
do we all think? Like it was, yeah, I'm playing to the big crowd, but at the end of the day, it's me and you. You getting a load of this? Like I
Yeah.
always tell our people, the camera is another person. And when I was at my lowest point in 2016 when I first got into Magic, and I would try vlogging and stuff. And so I have a series of vlogs and stuff that are in my archives that nobody will ever see, of saying exactly what was on my mind. It was a lot of sad stuff, but there was a lot of positive stuff about Magic at the time. And that is the person who's the camera. Like that person might be alone. They might just be so hyped about this thing, and their local area, there's no one to hang out with, or
Hmm.
like I noticed in Amsterdam, that community was so excited about online folks. I think it's
Insanely
because
so. Insanely, like I've never seen in my life.
right, and I think it's because they have to engage more online because it's a smaller place. Probably that's my
There were
theory.
people. There were people I got to talk to who were from like very small towns and very small countries where it's like to play Magic they have to go 2 countries over, and they're like,
Right,
look, for us, you guys are like giant celebrities and rock stars. We see you online. We have parasocial relationships. We can hang out and chat with you and feel like you're here. And seeing you in the flesh is like a dream that like they don't understand like how you came to our country. And
right,
it was overwhelming to me almost because like what you said there, a lot of people came to me in Amsterdam and told me that like my show was like being able to have a conversation with them in you know like wherever they lived about magic and bringing them into this circle as if like even if they don't have it at their local store or their local store is literally far away from wherever they live and they've got no one to play with, they can still engage with the game through us. And
right.
that's just like it's a hell of a responsibility, it's like a very weighty kind of like just a feeling of like, oh, I didn't realize that this is the service I'm providing, but I'm glad that it's working for you.
The folks who are working 2 jobs and don't have time to play Commander. When I was working at that studio doing animation stuff, Commander night would start and end by the time I would get home. So
Hmm.
for the folks who can't play Commander tonight, that's who we're here for. Like,
Yeah.
how cool is it that with all the minimal time that people have, they're willing to spend it with us? So we got to take that
Right.
seriously and
Exactly.
put on an amazing show.
I mean, that's what I respect about the Command Zone and like the work that you guys do so much is because it's not condescending. It's not like it's you're definitely entertainment, but it's hitting such a broad base of people that it's it's turning this thing that we just used to treat as like our fun time hobby into something that like you don't even have to play Magic to enjoy and engage with and be able to really just get the most out of. And I think like there's a lot of talent and hard work that goes into making something like Commander approachable, and I don't think anybody does better than you guys.
Well, I appreciate that. We all have our own style. When you sit down and do a game nights interview with me, Josh, or Murph, you're going to have a different experience every time.
Yeah.
Uh, Me and Murph love working together for that reason, is because we're Venn diagram of two complete circles, right? Uh, for me, like I'm focused on is the viewer going to have to watch this more than once? Are they going to need to pause at any point? Or are they going to catch it on the first time in real time? If there was no pause button, would they understand what you're talking about? And if the answer
Mm.
is no, we haven't done our job.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, because like, I mean, I guess I'm curious, and I'm curious if you'd be willing to delve into this. How do you take something like if you're directing a show or if you're running like game nights or something, and not even the live, that's a different bag of fish entirely. But like even the taped ones, how do you make it so like is there an art form in getting people to be able to communicate? like how do you get someone to talk in a way that's understandable? Because like we use a lot of jargon, man.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what's really easy is just feeding them odds. Like
Mm.
I could do a game nights interview in my sleep. Wow, Mindstone is good now, and it's going to be good later too. Right now it taps for mana, but later on I can crack it for a card. So this is an amazing turn two play. I'm going to have to see what Jimmy does, dude. Like I could feed these people this stuff all day long. But what's amazing is I want to hear what you think. Okay, and from your perspective. So if somebody plays something like a Mindstone or a Signet, the reason we fly cards up and do red circles and interviews and stuff is pretty much just so you can read it. Like we
Mm.
need you to have, if I'm going to put a card on screen, I want you to be able to read it twice. That's kind of my rule of thumb. Is or if I need you to read it twice, but not the three paragraphs of it, we'll have that red circle for you to focus, right? And this is a playbook written by Josh and carried out by me and Murph and Manson, the whole team for many years now. Uh, it's just when you have nothing to say about a card, people expect you to say, "Wow, Jimmy played a forest on turn one, and there was amazing VFX animation and stuff." Like we don't do that. When there's a do nothing play, we're like, "Okay, what do you think about who's in first right now?" Or what's the worst that could happen with this card? What's the best that could happen with this card? What did you think about this card? My favorite thing that somebody says when I ask that question is, "I don't care about this card." I said, "Great, tell me all about that. Why do you think that this card doesn't matter? Why do you think that they're wasting mana on this play right now?"
Oh,
Because
that's so cool.
I got four people who are going to tell me, "Wow, this card's amazing. Now it's going to be a great layer too." Like easy, okay. I need some conflict. That's the heart of entertainment, right?
God, you must. I'm just thinking of how much like so. I don't know if you know this about me, but I used to also be a video editor. I was a video editor at Sony PlayStation, and I got to make some commercials and stuff for like God of
Video
War and
games.
Uncharted 2 and things
Yeah,
like that. Yeah. And so like I know where you're coming from, and I'm just thinking about like how much footage must you have to clip down into such a cool show? Like you guys
yeah.
must have hours and hours of just tape.
Per show, it's like let's say the shoot goes pretty long and the game is 6 hours. So that's going to be 6 hours on four cameras, and then it's going to be probably a 3 hour interview for Josh's interview and 2.5 hours for everybody else. Because Josh is kind of our catch-all. We tend to put him third
Yeah.
or fourth in the schedule because he knows what we're trying to do through and through. He wrote the book, right?
Right.
So
So you can fill in the gaps if there's something that like your guests aren't providing.
yeah, or we can say, this guest, they didn't have much to say about this card. They didn't care about this card. Can you fill us in?
Hmm.
So I think the most important thing is just a level of cynicism where you're willing to say, like, this ain't working. This isn't funny. This isn't good. Or sometimes you have to say, we're going to do this, even though this isn't making me throw my head back and laugh, because general positivity also is worth something.
Yeah.
Like,
And I don't think that's cynicism. I don't think it's cynicism to say like, hey, you know what? We could do that better. Cynicism would be like throw the one up there anyways because it's good enough. That's
yeah, they'll,
cynicism.
they'll eat anything.
Yeah, like no, saying like, "Hey, we can do this better" is not. That's like the opposite of cynicism. That's like work ethic, you know.
Right.
And like, I think that's one of the things I just respect so much is like the willingness to be like, "No, we can do better." Like, or hey, do that again, but this time don't put your hand in front of the cards or whatever it is. Um, so, like, without giving the magic away, because I think there's a lot of value in not knowing like who's behind the curtain. Um, like Josh is such a fundamental part of all this stuff, but when he's playing, he can't direct at the same time.
You'd be
So,
surprised.
well, maybe
I'll
not.
say
I
it.
know Josh, but
Yeah, let me pull the curtain back a little bit. The thing about directing and producing is you're trying to keep everybody positive and having a great time. And sometimes you really got to pick your spot of, hey, I know that this thing is going to be abrasive to our party situation that, all 10 people in the room are having right now, but I have to do this. And it's,
hmm,
sometimes there's a cost to like, listen, I'm sorry, we have to take that turn back and start back at the upkeep and all that because the visuals just weren't there. They're not going to connect. And I really need it that way for reasons that's
hmm.
only in my mind. But the thing about Josh and Jimmy is they've been on, dozens of these episodes. They're
Hundreds.
pushing 75 now. and I think they've only taken a couple off each. But those guys know what we're trying to do, especially Josh, and you can't stop a gamer from gaming. They're going to jump in and they're going to say the thing to help the guest or whatever. So really, as our job as producers, directors, is to sit back and listen for the things that didn't get caught. Like you got to have some big ears, because for the 20 things that need to be said, 19 are probably going to get said at the table by somebody else. The 20th thing is my job. I got to make sure that we caught that thing. Or sometimes I'll have an idea of, well, I think I'm going to cut it like this, or I think it should be cut like this. And Josh is a different type of director. It just is what it is. He might want to cut it a different way, and Mark might cut it a different way. But there have been times where I'm sure whoever's cutting on that episode was like, oh, thank God, whoever piped up or whoever put their foot down and said, I believe in this approach. Thank goodness they said that, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I love that.
It's just all about people. It's about making sure the vibe is there and the energy is there, because people can smell it if it's not there. So keeping it a good time is key.
Yeah, I mean, like when you've done like 75, 80, whatever shows you've done, there's some that are just going to be better than others, and some are just going to be like, well, it didn't come together. And that's just the nature of editing and the nature of putting on a program. But when you're in the editing room, like I know you don't do a lot of direct hands-on editing anymore, right? Or
I'm trying to get back into it this year. We're going to be able to get the band back together on a couple of episodes, it looks like, in this coming schedule. But yeah, Murph has been taking the lead on that team and deserves big credit and huge props for
he's a very nice guy too.
Down the fort there and making game nights continue to grow and be better than it's ever been. By knowing the playbook, being open to collaboration, he's willing to be like, yeah, you want to give me notes on something? Sure. Give me the notes. Well, the worst I'm going to do is not listen to it. So, it's a good situation.
So when you're like putting the story together for the episode, like, is there one guiding voice, or do you guys kind of collaborate on that?
Yeah, so we all watch it. The editors will spend the entire day just watching the one episode, and we'll have to, be a little salty sometimes and say, this is not it. This ain't it. And the tough thing is in marketing, like, don't open your mouth unless you know what the shot is, right? Glenn Ross, like, don't open your mouth unless you know what the solution is going to be. That's the wrong approach in game nights. It's like, we need to be putting problems on the board. And I don't know how we're going to solve this problem. I'm not afraid to open my mouth and say that this isn't working right now.
Somebody else might have an idea.
Exactly. Like 10 minutes later in the cut, and there'll be some other thing that comes up, and we're like, got it. We know what to do now. Like, my favorite example is I've talked about this on the podcast, the Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate episode. That one had Josh playing this artifact deck, and he had KCI out, and it was just this infinite thing, yada, yada. And as editors, we're just not having a fun time watching it. So how's the viewer going to be having fun? So we have to tell the viewer, hey, we know what you're talking about. We're going to start crossfading through his turn and blah, blah, blah. Look at Josh, right, everybody? And it's like, you need to find the story in that, because basically the story right now is Josh goes until he doesn't. And the story ended up being Josh goes, doesn't pay for Ristic study, and gets bit in the butt by a genius play at just the right moment by a killer player. Lexi. She was awesome to work with. She's a good storyteller.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then my favorite thing is me and Murph were up in the game nights room, and we hear Jacob Bertrand come in because we were going to play Magic or go to a movie or some reason he was there. And he's like, wow, yeah, that episode of Game Nights was awesome because Lexi came in and edited at just the right moment. And basically said our exact thesis word for word. And I looked at Murph deep in the eyes and was like, yeah, we did that.
I love that. I love it when you're sitting there, like as an editor, there's nothing better feeling than when you're sitting there, you're working on this thing that's just not coming together. You're struggling. You're putting this garbage. You're like, it's got to go. Fine. And then somebody comes back, it's like, oh my God, that was like eye-opening. Or the fireworks went off. I'm like, I'll take it. I'll take
Yeah,
it. You know?
it's really hard when you're in the content to make that judgment. Like there's a recent episode of Extra Turns where it's Lord of the Rings themed Extra Turns, and I have not. I've barely seen all the movies. I was going through a breakup 12 years ago when I watched all those movies, so I kind of know what you're talking about. But my character that I played into the whole time was like, "What are you guys talking about?" I don't. You guys are just yapping. Like so I tried to lean into that, but then when you're judging yourself, you're like, man, I can see that guy's not having a good time, or he's a little too salty. It looks like he really doesn't like being there. Um, so it just
Ooh.
throws it for a whole loop. It's a lot easier when it's just other people on screen.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, like, dude, I know I have to edit this show for myself all the time, and
Right.
there's times I'm definitely like, man, I am not having it this week. What's going on?
Like, you
But
know what
like,
that face means. Yeah.
can't yell at yourself though.
Right.
But well, I mean, you can. It's just not very productive. So how did you find magic though?
Yeah. So I was an X-Wing player, and I found that through Star Wars podcasts, and really, my
The X-Wing miniatures game?
yeah. So my ex-girlfriend and I, we were just, we were going through it, and we were both grown up, and we're great friends now, but it was just such a complicated time.
Hmm.
And in that density, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to dive into podcasting and YouTube, and like, that's going to be my form of entertainment. I'm going to commit to this. So what's going on? And it was 2014. So Star Wars was the big thing. So I found some Star Wars gaming podcasts and stuff. And they talked about the X-Wing miniatures game. I go to the game store and I buy it. It's $40. And I look at my brother and I say, well, we'll play this all the time because this is way too much money. I should not be spending this. Flash forward to 2 years later, and I'm there every single X-Wing night. The lead guys probably don't like me very much, and I've got every single ship, and I'm pretty darn good at the game. But I'm also like, I'm sure I'm not that fun to play against. I like to talk smack. I like to be the villain, and that's a lot easier in Commander. But then the manager invited me to his birthday party along with a bunch of other Magic players. And they were like, if you ever want to borrow a deck, let's do it. And that convinced me. So April 2016, Shadows over Innistrad release day, I played Sealed, and I've been in it ever since.
Man, Shadows over Innistrad's a weird set to jump into. It's
Yeah.
a real that was a set that nearly made me call it a day on Magic, man. It was too gross.
Green
But
White Humans, that was my deck, and
oh
it was
god.
all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that set was definitely not a good time if you're a green player.
Yeah.
But Shadows is a good set. But yeah, man, so has your relationship with Magic changed now that you've been so deep in this content mine for so long?
Yeah, I used to be. It's nice to watch my brother kind of go through this because the last couple of years he's been getting into the game, and his housemates, they all play together. It's fun to watch him go through these same things. He just texted me tonight and said, "I built a Kenrith deck, and now all my friends hate me." Like, that's the sort of player I was for a long time. Was, wait a second, I didn't know you could put these things together, and then it does that. Whoops. So I spent a lot of time doing that, and then recently I just decided, I'm a main phase kind of guy. It's just what I like to do is I'll main phase. I'm not tricking you, and I just mainly build interesting main phase decks. I've got.
I like to tell people that I live my life at sorcery speed.
Yeah, yeah. Like there are times where I'm like talking to a friend who plays Magic or something. I'll be like, listen, I'm a main phase kind of guy. Okay, like I'm not pulling one over on you here. Trust me. But that's kind of the direction that I've gone in because Commander is in this funny place where I keep saying that the gears are very large, but the teeth are very small. So games end.
Can you explain?
Sure. I think games kind of end turn 7 or 8 in my world. But on scripts for game nights, we do a transcript of every single play that happens. The scripts keep getting longer and the turns keep getting shorter. So we'll have a 7.5 turn game that's longer than, in paper wise, than a 13 turn game from a few years ago when I first started. And there's just, all right, I'm going to play this for 2 mana. I'm going to tap that, and then I'm going to look at the top card of my deck. Okay, I'm not going to do anything with that. I'll get 2 energy, and then I'm going to scry 1, put that one on the bottom. Okay, and then I will untap. Ugh, kill me. Whereas it used to be, All right, and then I'm going to tap 6 mana. I'm going to play Shivan Dragon. Whoa. Wow. Okay, so
Hmm.
Jimmy's got a flyer in the air right now, and it's got fire breathing, and he's mono red, so this and that and the third. Like, it actually gave us
Yeah.
something exciting to talk about, but now there are all these cards that I need the viewers to be reading, and most of them are like tap to loot. Like, come on.
Right? And no, but it's like 4 paragraphs to tell you tap to loot.
Exactly. And I'm not hating on that, but that's kind of where I'm interested to see game nights grow in the next few years. Is I don't really see that stopping. So how do we react to that as creators? Do we
Yeah.
really show everything, or what do we do about that? I don't know yet.
Well, I mean that is a that's a really interesting and fair question, because I think about that a lot as a creator as well, where it's like these cards are getting so long and they're getting so wordy. How do you grab a viewer's attention to the part that matters out of the 6 clauses on this card that are
Right.
just like going to trigger at different functions and different times, or have 2 sides and then a book on each side? And like,
Yeah.
I'm glad that I was not thinking about content during the time of Strixhaven, is mainly what I'm trying to say, because that
Like,
would
let's
have
say
just
that a
proved me
player
wrong.
impulsive draws one of those Strixhaven legends that's like the black white one that flips. Like, how am I going to explain to the viewer the tough choice that this person has to make between these two cards or whatever else is on the top of their library? Like, ugh, I got to create that drama. I got to keep. I always used to say, if my cousin Brady could understand it, then we're doing the right thing because he's a great gamer. He was still kind of learning the game. If he was on the train, then we've done a good job. And some of these decks that I see nowadays, like,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see some of the change in game nights in terms of just like how it used to go from like Josh and Jimmy play their collections to now it's like we're going to build decks based around the set that's coming out, which is fair and reasonable. WotC sponsors you, it makes sense. But at the same time, it's like, God, having to come up with these decks week in and week out and do it in a way that's not just like falling onto template is just such a monumental challenge, because the viewers are going to be paying attention and they're going to be like, Josh did that in episode 38 as well,
right.
and you're
This
like,
is
okay, bro.
probably one of the only places in the world where you can work as a deck coordinator. Uh, Jamie Block and Rachel Weeks are our two deck coordinators. They curate the pod. They make sure that everything is going to be a good time. We want everybody to have a chance, but we don't want to remove drama. So it's an interesting balance. It's a cool job.
My favorite episode of Game Nights that I still quote to people to this day, there was a one that was like, it was based around a Ravnica guilds or something like that, and everybody was playing like a non-blue guild, and somehow Josh and Rachel Agnes were sitting there playing against each other and got into a counter war, and neither of them were playing blue, and it's just like every black and white and red counterspell in the history of Magic is on this stack, and it's getting bigger and bigger. I'm like, this is the 2 spikiest people in the world have found a way to turn red black and red white into counterspell wars, and I don't know what's going on.
I love those moments.
It was so good.
When we have a stack going on the show, it's really fun behind the scenes because Josh has this face. Okay, like when he's directing, he's watching everything real close. I'm like, all right, you're gonna want to do this, and then can you actually re-say this? Perfect, thanks. Hey, do you mind saying this for me? Cool. But then when he's got counter wars and stuff, he's sitting over there and he's purely a player. And there are times where I'm like, hey, guest, this is your first time here. So glad to have you. Let me just remind you, you are working with 2 players over there. We over here, we are on everybody's side. If you need anything, let us know. They're not going to try to screw you over, but gamers are going to be gamers, So I love those moments where, his eyes light up and his lids are like half open,
I have long said that Josh Lee Kwai is one of the best deck designers Commander's ever seen, and
For
he's
sure.
just an insane player. He's so good at what he does. It's really just kind of unfair, but
He really should be in like civil engineering or something that the human race could take advantage of.
something of value.
Right.
Yes,
But instead he builds these decks and these companies about making decks.
dude. You know what? I'm glad he's in the community. We need somebody like Josh around. So, but relatedly, you were talking about cool guests. You guys have had a lot of insane guests. Like every
Yeah.
time I look, people are like, "Oh, Shivam, you should be on Game Nights." I'm like, I am not Post Malone. I'm not at the
There are
caliber
very
of
few
TV
seats.
show, man.
There's so few seats nowadays. It's like a miracle anyone new hits the scene because, how many do we do a year? And then we have 3 hosts, and they're
Yeah.
not all 3 in every episode, but they're pretty contested seats.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not. I'm not even saying that you should. I
I know.
wouldn't. I know better. But I'm just saying, like, what has it been like? Like, because like you're a Hollywood studio putting on a show, so you got people coming in all the time who are like professionals in the content making industry or music or real acting or whatever it is.
Yeah, you get used to
How
it.
like you get used to it probably, right? Because you've got to do your job.
Well, I feel like I've been used to it because for me, the celebrity followed, DM'd, liked, and replied, and was like, "I want to be on your show." And the celebrity hired me to move down here. And the celebrity, Ashlyn Rose, was working in the next room for a long time. And the celebrity, the professor, was at my wedding. So when I meet the celebrity Post Malone, like the celebrities are shaking in their boots, but I'm feeling a little bit more acclimated, like 20% less starstruck because all the stars are already here. But Post
Man,
Malone, that was a trip. Like we could
yeah.
not believe it was happening at the time. He had messaged us on Patreon, and he was a patron for like 7 months, and we never knew. I think everybody needs to check their Patreon and make sure that Austin Post is not in your followers.
What? Okay.
Just be sure. Yeah. And then he messaged us on Instagram like saying cheers, and then somebody responded back from our team with 2 mugs clinking together because they weren't sure if it was really him. And then somebody else caught it, and they're like, "What's going on here?" And we didn't believe it until Josh was on FaceTime with them. And I was lucky enough to be in the room as that was all happening. He's got, a suit of armor behind him in the FaceTime. It was like, he said, "Yeah, I'm going to be in LA next week. Why don't we link up then?" That's when we shot our thing. And it was the night before we all got together and had this big party at his hotel room. It's so funny. Vinny from Game Nights, we were like, "Hey, Posty, can we have somebody let Vinny in downstairs?" He's like, "Vinny's coming? Dude, you guys got all the legends." Like,
what the hell?
We're really into the lore here. So we played until like 4 o'clock in the morning that day. And then we're like, okay, we're going to go home. We're all going to get some rest. And then we're going to shoot this thing at 4 p.m. the next day. And so we get there and shoot the thing, and then we play more Magic for another few hours after that till 4 o'clock in the morning again. And it was actually one of the riskiest shoots that I've ever been on because we lost power to the overhead camera.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Stuff like this has happened since, and it's all, just mistake stuff, honestly, on my part of, I messed up with the amount of storage that I gave it, or I didn't check the thing. But this was the first time it ever really happened. We were taking a bathroom break. Somebody stepped on the cord, and we lost power to the camera. If you know anything about H.264, you know that it needs to be wrapped. You can't just, have a stream of H.264 and have it work. That works with frame codecs, but not H.264. So I look at the camera, and I say, "Oh, blank." And Ashlyn's still in the room with me, along with a DP friend of ours who was there to do some BTS. And she's like, "Is everything okay? Do you need me to plug it back in?" And I'm like, and then the BTS guy says, he thinks he just lost everything. So I'm like, all right, let's keep this quiet.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't just unlock right there, because I would have died. I've had that happen to me before on a shoot, and it's just like, oh no.
One of the things that I've learned is when there's something serious going on, unless there's somebody out there who can, who's a firefighter beyond, my capabilities or something, we're going to keep this tight until there's news to be delivered. Because rumors and all that stuff can get away from you and totally derail the vibe. And the vibe is the most important thing on a 12, 14-hour shoot day.
Yeah.
So I Googled my way out of it. Turns out the camera can boot into safe mode, and it can rewrap the file for exactly this problem. So it was all okay. But there were some rumors going around at the shoot of like, yeah, we might have to do it all over again. Hey guys, we might have to do it all over again. Like, don't just wait.
Just stop.
Let me finish Googling. But we were so lucky. It could have been worse. It should have been worse, but it wasn't. So.
Oh, you take those wins, man. You take those wins.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
that episode, the Neon Dynasty episode, and Lost Caverns of Ixalan, I think are my three favorites out of all of them. Neon Dynasty was also Post Malone, but I got to conduct the interview on that one, and it was just a whole journey. But Lost Caverns of Ixalan, the professor's one of my closest friends. He just understands, like sometimes you catch eyes with people and they just know the same, history as you do.
Yeah.
So he's one of those people for me. And directing him was so fun. Like the amount of bits that we came up with the pirate voice stuff. And there was a part where he's like, and that's why Game Nights is not scripted. And then like, it's a script. We were just playing and having fun like we were 12 years old.
He is one of my favorite people to work with, like bar none. I mean, my relationship with him goes back way, way far. And it's just like, I love the prof. Everybody knows it. He is a gift to us.
Were
And it's
you part of the
like,
anime imports class?
I am, in fact, part of the anime imports class. Yeah, it turned out like there was a lot of us who came out of there. Ashlyn Rose came out of there.
Right.
It's like it's wild how this tiny little store in Pacifica ended up just being such a huge like birthing pod, I guess, for so many of us. I remember one time Josh and Jimmy and like their crew drove out for a pre-release or something to just hang out with us at Anime Imports. I was like,
wow.
What the hell are you doing here? Okay. It was cool. Oh man, it was nice to be young. Yeah, me and Prof actually came back to Magic at the same event, at the same Innistrad pre-release, and we kind of came up together, so it was really cool.
I kind of have that with Jim LePage, where both me and Jim started at the same time, and he messaged me one time. He's like, "Hey, my group is thinking about organizing a tournament. Do you have any advice?" Or I forget what exactly we were talking about, but he called me through Discord, and we were just chatting about, here are all of my strong opinions, Jim. Here's what I think you should do. And I honestly thought that he was like 20 years old. I didn't realize, oh, wait a second. This is one of the wisest people you'll ever meet in your life.
Jim LePage is the most genuine and kind dude, and just an absolute sweetheart of a person.
He stays in his lane, but he also waters the flowers in yours.
Yeah, like look, I haven't had a chance to say this, but like of the folks like who are now post Sheldon running Commander, having it in hands of like Jim and Olivia is incredibly heartening to me, because it's like those two are insanely good people on like any metric you want, and it's just like it's going to be great for us.
I've loved working with Olivia over the years, especially on Game Nights Live, because Olivia loves coming through for you. Like,
yes,
she loves landing the plane. Is there a cosplayer on this plane? Yes. I will solve your problem now. She
has gotten me out of more jams than I care to admit.
Right. Like, she just loves delivering. Like, there's something about her, like, I'll say, the cube of consequence, like, I need some help with, getting the decals to stick to it. And she's like, don't even worry about it. I got it. That's who she is.
Oh, man. So what would you say has been like, so you've kind of moved up the ranks as you've been going through, and like, what would you say the biggest challenges you've seen in running game nights or doing this job have been?
It's a job. That's the toughest part, is keeping your head on straight. Like, there are some people out there who are more inclined to take their work really seriously. And I'm definitely one of those people, that wherever I go, I'm going to have a ton of like, complexity that I bring to it, because I put so much heart into it, of like worrying that this thing that I said on a podcast or whatever is gonna affect my perception at the day job or whatever, or just I worry about a lot of stuff. And when I was a kid, I would not deliver on anything. My GPA was 1.7 in high school. I tested really, really well, but I just had such a horrible work ethic, and now I like kicking that, and trying to be the most hardworking person that I can be, and being reliable for somebody. Like, so it just becomes, it's complicated. It's an emotionally complicated thing for me to have a job at all. So to have the coolest job in the world, boy, does that confuse that tendency. Because I'll be working with Post Malone. I'll be working with Aaron Hansen. These super
You're
cool
working with
people.
friggin' Jimmy Wong.
Exactly. That's right. Like I have like one of the wisest mentors ever, Josh Lee Kwai. Like, and I tell you what, there are some things where, I've been an editor, like I said, for we can call it 17 years, because I feel like I was 14, but I was there after school every single day. I was, obsessed with video back then, but you know, you never stop learning. And when I'm kind of hitting my head against the wall and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know how to punch this up. I don't know how to get it across the line. I have Josh to go to. And there are some times where, like, I think he'll tell you when it comes to Premiere, I'm definitely the resident expert on all the features of Premiere.
Hmm.
Okay. But that guy could fix a car with the freaking hammer. Okay.
Right.
Like, he will take whatever tools in front of him and make his vision happen. Okay. The hammer's going
I've
to take
had
quite a
some.
while, but
Yeah.
he'll make it happen.
I've had some really deep conversations with Josh about like editing before, back when we were still kind of new in Commander and stuff. And just the guy sees things with the eye of an artist and a craftsman, which is hard in this industry because you see
Right.
people who are either craftsmen or artists. But Josh has both the vision of the finished product and how to get there.
Right.
And like even in like half an hour of talking to him about like editing, I learned more from him than I did from, grinding at Sony trying to figure out how to make this ad work. And it's just like, I mean, you guys have such a like when the dude running the company is one of the best in the biz, that is just good for everybody there. Right? Like you
It's
got just learned so much, even just by osmosis, just by being there, seeing the choices he makes helps you understand why things are just why it works. And I mean,
and
the numbers
sometimes
don't lie; everything works.
yeah, so sometimes I got to remind him like, hey man, I really I need my Jedi Master right now to get me to make this thing what we're going for, because I want to succeed. And that's like the tough thing for me is I'm trying to fight the allegations for that I assign myself of being lazy. I try to fight that by working super hard, but I still am not hitting my mark that I want to hit, uh, even when working super hard on something.
I mean,
And
that's
having that
human nature
mentor
right
there,
there.
yeah, it's amazing. And across the board, like I said, that he should have been in civil engineering or something. It's across the board. It's like, in whatever it is you want to talk about, he will think about it with this gamer brain that uh, knows how to solve things.
He is, yeah. I mean, I've had nothing but nice words for Josh, but lately though, I'm really curious because you've been directing the Game Nights Lives, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm a director and producer for Game Nights Live, along with my producing partner Jamie Block. Jamie Block is amazing. He works with our writer Jordan to handle all of the paper stuff. Like,
Hmm.
it's funny, if you're part of our team, you know which thing is a Jake thing and which thing is a Jamie thing.
Hmm.
Okay, same thing with me and Jamie. It's like this excellent dynamic. Because at Magic 30, the first one, I was kind of given Magic 30 as like, all right, this is going to be your thing. You're going to figure
Oh,
this out,
geez.
okay?
Oh
And
no.
obviously, I worked really close with Josh to do it, and he was the creative director throughout it. But there were big questions like, how big can we make this?
Hmm.
And Watsy helped out a lot with, here's the general direction we're trying to go. Uh, but as far as like the cube of consequence, I challenge anybody out there to find a larger cube that is blank. I cannot find one. Uh, but I went from editing to I'm going to hire all these dancers.
Yeah.
I'm going to know everything there is to know about making flags. And I'm going to know that every time I order from this company, I have to call them and be like, no plastic film in between the layers. Thank you very much. You know, and then uh, all the broadcast stuff, like, because there's a whole level of video engineering where if you know video editing, everything that's baked down to an H.264, you become an expert
Mhm.
pretty quick. Okay. But when it comes to video engineering, there's some stuff that I learned where, like, I can't believe these guys are talking through this, like, as we're trying to make sure everything's good, like, but there's such experts back there that it's
Mm.
this whole other part of the business that I'm really happy to just not be an expert in something. Like, I mean, as far as creative goes, like, I wouldn't call myself an expert. When it comes to nerd stuff, like 422 versus 420 depth and stuff like that. I could talk about that till the cows come home. But I'm very happy to be in a world where I just say, I don't know. Here's what I want. I don't know how you're going to do that. Here's what I want.
You deal with that part. Make it happen.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, that's what you hire good people for, right? Like if you
Right.
hire somebody who knows their business, you say, look, I need it to look like this. And then your DP goes and magic happens.
The
You don't
best
necessarily
thing,
know the details. You just need to know that the person you're talking to does, right?
I
Like
had this
that's
really
so
formative experience with my former boss. He was a VFX artist, and I was talking with him about like, hey, I need this thing taken out. There's like a drone here. I don't know. Maybe you can key out a certain amount of luminance to another. Like, I don't know how you're gonna do this. He's like, don't tell me how to do it. Just tell me what
Yeah.
you want.
right.
And like, and as he was saying that, I was like, oh, did I do something wrong? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your toes. Like, no, it's not about that. It's like, don't waste your creative brain on stuff that doesn't matter. Like I tell
Right.
that to our scriptwriters all the time. It's like, just don't worry about how it's going to get done. Don't even start thinking about that. Just what do you want? And then I'll tell you why you can't have all those things.
I mean, putting on a live show for anything is incredibly difficult, but the
Right.
fact that you guys have turned this into a whole pageantry of just like I'll be honest, like I usually have like conflicts so that don't let me sit and watch the whole game nights live when they're there, but I make it a point to watch every intro because
Yeah.
the intros of people coming in is just one of the most fantastic and fabulous moments in our culture as like in Magic players, and I just absolutely love the creativity involved and the pageantry and the whole setup. Because I remember I was talking to Frank Karsten, and at the first Philadelphia MagicCon, and I was like at the Pro Tour, and I'm like, "Did you get a chance to go to the Magic Hall?" And he's like, "Yeah, I went and I walked around, and saw a little bit of Game Nights Live and stuff." And I'm like, "Cool, yeah, it's very different from over here." And I gestured to the Pro Tour, and he's like, "Yeah, at the Pro Tour, nobody's chanting my name."
Yeah. We believe that everybody is just seconds away from giving it up and screaming at the top of their lungs. Like it is fun to yell.
Oh yeah.
There
Oh,
are
yeah.
things that I've learned that have just totally influenced me as a creative. Like me and Jamie, we were banging our heads against the wall trying to crack Minneapolis. Because Minneapolis, we had this big idea of the Olympics. Let's make it themed after the Olympics. And that's really easy to say. But then you have, 8 people per player coming out. And how do you ratchet it up? Because something that we believe is the first one, if we just did the first level 4 times, that would get boring. So you have to level it up each player that comes out. So sometimes that just dictates who comes out first and stuff like that. So we were having the hardest time, and we spent a couple of hours in overtime one day just being like, okay, let's start over and let's write something insane. Like, oh, you want me to ratchet it up? Watch this. And so, almost out of spite, we're writing insane things. Okay. And the one that I always hang my hat on is, and then at the very end, the Blue Angels fly overhead, period. And the thing about that is, like, it sounds like a joke, but then if you watch Minneapolis, the Blue Dragons flew overhead. Because we were like, wait a second. What if there are Dragon 3D models out there? Okay. What if we cut to outside the arena? There are all these, there's a stadium. Because everybody knows kind of how alpha graphics work nowadays, I think, right? Transparency and stuff like that. So the way that Game Nights Live works is at Magic 30, it was originally just we'll play the music and then we'll cue the graphic lower third to fade up. And then when that player has walked up, we'll fade down the music, fade up the next one. We figured out that, okay, if the whole thing was one single movie file with transparency, we can cut to whatever we want to by just making it opaque. So at the very end, if you just watch through that Minneapolis one, we cut to people in the newsroom. And then they say, the Blue Dragons are going to fly overhead, right? Gavin's in the newsroom. And the whole concept of a newsroom came from this Blue Dragons moment of we can cut to something else that's happening. So how far can we take this? We're going to cut to commercials for Diet Halo. You've tried the rest, now try the Blessed. And Modern Horizon Wireless. Like, service above standard. We had so many fun things that we got to do. because of this spiteful. Then the Blue Angels fly overhead. Here's your script. What do you think?
I love that so much.
You have to
Oh
take
man.
it to that crazy level and go a little nuts to go somewhere that you didn't know you could. Like, it's not enough to stare up the steps. You got to step up the stairs. And unless you try beyond what you've already mastered, you'll never grow.
Amen to that. You know what? That seems like a really good place to call this a show. That was a fantastic chat. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to finally sit down and talk. This is probably the
Yeah.
longest we've got to talk ever.
Honestly, it feels like it. It feels like we only get to meet for like 10 minutes at a time, and then it's like,
Right.
whoosh.
And we get
But
whisked
this
away onto whatever dinner is going on, you know?
Yeah, right. I mean, that's con life for you.
Right.
But in any case, my friend, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been absolutely lovely. And if folks wanted to find you, where could they go?
They can find me, JakeBossMTG, on Twitter and Instagram. And I'm going to be posting about a YouTube video that I'm working on. It's a very extensive look into the entire history of, well, not the history, but every single episode of Stargate. There's 350 of them, and I'm at 65 right now, and it's 2 hours long. So this video is going to be 8 hours. It'll come out in 6 months to a year. And, you know, like I said, you know, my childhood was complicated. So really, this looks like a video that's breaking down every episode of Stargate. But when we get to season 7, I've got a lot of stuff to talk about. I think you'll find that you sit with anyone for 6 to 8 hours, the trauma comes out around hour 6.
That is
so it's
truthful.
It's going to be my opus, and I love it. So keep an eye out for that.
Looking forward to that. Anyways, my friends, you can find me at Gear Report Gears. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at YouTube every Tuesday, thanks to my editor, Dan. And you can also find me on Shivam Wheeler Love Magic, where we sit and talk about every single set in the history of the game. And you can also find me on the Chronicles of Dragonlance, a monthly podcast about Dragonlance novels, because I've got nothing but time and I love talking into microphones. But with that, my friends, remember, it's not magic without the gathering, and we'll see you next time.